Hello, my name is Raymond Gonzalez, and I took a left at the Valley.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from some Baxter building in Abbotsford, BC, this is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and my hard, rocky exterior is a sure thing. Joining me as usual is the fantastic team, local superheroes of atheism. She'll force field your ass into understanding history. Nancy.
Hey, that's me.
He flames on when it's time to be skeptically burned fallacies. Tyler.
I think I would be better as Daredevil.
And he's so elastic when he jokes that it stretches the imagination. Kevin.
Oh, is that my cue?
It sure is. Guys, welcome back.
Good to be back. Always good to be back.
Yes. I hope you guys had a great week.
You know, I was thinking I'd like to steal your job as the host, but there's no way I could come up with that kind of intro stuff. I don't know where you get that from.
That's probably my one talent I have anyway. So
I would probably steal your job if I didn't have to worry about the pressure of coming up with that crap every week. So good on you.
That's one reason why we don't unleash the Tyler every week.
Well, guys, you know what? Today is a bit of a momentous occasion. You know why?
Yes, but tell everybody else.
Today is our 100th episode. Believe it or not.
Woohoo!
But it's not my 100th episode.
No, it's not your 100th episode, but it still is the 100th episode of the Left of the Valley radio podcast.
I know, we all have our own, still have our fingers and toes, we still have listeners,
I know.
And you keep coming up with guests and ideas, so we're pretty good.
We haven't been sued or anything.
No.
I think I showed up when you guys were like number 60-something.
You showed up when we were at CIVL, so.
Yeah, it was, well...
You're still a baby, really.
Second show, I think. Yeah, you guys were doing the podcast for years before I showed up, so...
Well, I won't say years. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter.
2 years, I think.
You're part of the crew now, and that's what's important.
That's what's important, absolutely.
So we're going to have a great show today. We're going to be talking about food waste, but before that, let's do a bit of chit-chat, like we usually do. So, I guess I should almost pull some kind of funeral march thing. Now, Obama is going to be out, and Trump is going to be in. How do you guys feel about that?
I can't even.
I was doing good until you. Now I'm so depressed.
You had to bring it up. Every single post that I'm on the internet, somebody's bringing it up, and I thought I could just live through denial.
I mean, the contrast between this elegant man, brilliant, elegant, compassionate man, and his wonderful wife and their great kids, and Trump is just, I mean, the chasm between the two is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to fool us and turn out to be not as bad as we think?
You know, maybe I'm super naive and being overly optimistic, but, part of me wants to say, well, maybe we're judging the man too quickly, right? Maybe we're too rash in judging Trump. Yeah, of course he's a bit of a buffoon, but he is smarter than George Bush Jr.
Yeah,
so I have hope.
you look at the rants that he does at 140 characters, and you look at the people he surrounds himself with.
Yeah, George Bush couldn't spell rant.
I like what Obama said about
okay.
his Twitter account. If you can't be trusted with his Twitter account, how do you think he's going to do with the country?
Yeah, they said the nuclear codes needs to be more than 140 characters.
Good one, point Tyler.
But the recent thing is the healthcare thing, right?
Yes.
Or
Right now, the Senate is working to dismantle Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act.
Wow, and the problem with Obamacare is that it's basically required some people to spend like $600 a month more than they would have normally. Mm-hmm. So I was having this argument with somebody the other day, and I posted this really good article from, I think it's the Globe and Mail, so obviously a Canadian source. It's 5 key differences between Obamacare and Canadian healthcare. And I think Obama was more going after kind of our healthcare, but I mean, he had to make concessions, right?
Yeah.
So it's helping people and it's screwing other people. but it's because it's not single payer. They still have a profit tacked on
That's
the
right.
whole health insurance thing. So yeah, it's either go all the way or go home kind of deal when it comes to healthcare.
Well,
Why don't you spend a little bit of your military budget on it? That'd be great.
Oh yeah,
I think
that's always the argument.
what's really irritating me this week
This week.
about healthcare is that in order for the Republicans to dismantle Affordable Care Act, they're going at it piece by piece to dismantle it. And Bernie Sanders had an amendment. I'm not 100% familiar, so there's a little loosening, not of the facts, but it's just a little loosening. But the amendment that he put up about being able to get
Canadian
drugs from
drugs.
Canada.
Yeah.
And Big Pharma, as well as some of the
I
Democrats
think there's like
who were
15
voting,
of them that voted that down.
voted it down because
What
they
a
don't
shock.
think that the standards of drug manufacture in Canada are up to the way drugs are manufactured.
Oh, that's a load of crap.
And that
load of crap.
they started that back before Obamacare, to really fearmonger about drugs from Canada, and it's just Big Pharma
Oh, he totally
throwing
is.
out BS, to prevent competition and pricing bids. But I take that personally, and in Canada
Absolutely.
we should take that personally because our drugs are to those best standards, and in some cases, I understand better standards, or stricter standard, or a more strict standard than
Than
is
the Americans,
required.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll tell our American listeners right now. For example, remember when we had the Ebola virus thing going on?
Yeah.
You cured that Ebola virus by coming to Canada and taking the Canadian vaccine. This is how it happened. Because the Americans never pursued an Ebola vaccine because there was just no profit in it. And if you're an American and you're worried about Canadian drugs, I will tell you one thing. The only difference with our drugs is it tastes like Canadian bacon or poutine.
There you go.
That makes it taste really
You
good.
know,
good.
keeping your employees alive is a profitable endeavor. They just don't kind of see it that way.
Yeah.
They're of little or no use to you, Dad.
The only objections that the Americans, the Republicans and Big Pharma had actually was from the drug purveyors on the net who were selling fake drugs, and they're using that as a false equivalent, to the way all drugs are, and that.
Well, people have this weird misconception that our taxes are just gouging the shit out of us for healthcare. But I looked at recent stats, and we as a country spend something like 10% of our GDP on healthcare, and the United States is like 15%.
Yeah.
And
they spend more and they get less.
And their healthcare statistics just suck in comparison. And just all these, it's like the analogy that I used was like, you eat once a day and I eat 3 times a day. Okay, yeah, my grocery bill is going to be higher, of course. But I'm freaking healthier and not starving and getting all these problems. Like, of course it's going to be more expensive. But guess what? It's not. And we don't have 40, 50,000 people dying every single year because they don't have health coverage.
And let's face it, the Canadian healthcare system is not perfect. It's not perfect.
Well, no.
I find it's a bit top-heavy, and there's certainly some improvements we can have over it, but, I mean, it's a huge stretch. When I go to the States, I tell my customers in the States, you know what, I can't afford to be mean to you because I can't afford for you to punch me out and wake up in a Seattle hospital. I just can't afford that.
What do you pay in annual income taxes? I think my dad said he pays something like $25,000 a year in taxes, but he's also making $75,000 a year.
You guys pay taxes?
Well, I don't, but I mean, my situation.
Like, I would say Kevin, not necessarily those.
My situation's a little different, but they complain. They say, "Oh, you have to wait a long time." Okay, there are exceptions to the rule. I went blind at 13 years old. I've had 12 surgeries.
Say what?
Some of them were experimental, where they had to fly amniotic tissue out from Florida via helicopter.
You had 12 surgeries?
I've had 12 surgeries in total. I've had stem cell transplant for my mom, a cornea transplant from a kid who died in a car accident.
No wonder you're such a good-looking guy.
Exactly. All these different things, and you know what? 0 wait, and it costs me nothing. Yeah. And then I have American friends who their kid gets into a bike accident and breaks their leg, and the $2,000 bill
For a cast.
Well, and whatever pain medication, and the time in the hospital and all this ridiculous stuff. Like,
You lose the ability to work. You're totally. That's it.
Oh, yeah, you're done.
Because the HM was not going to cover you anymore, and you're hooped.
You're in the street.
that's the only American argument is, oh, well, we want to save taxes. Well, then you're a selfish dick, because maybe you don't need that kind of money, or maybe you're not sick. But what if you get sick? And what about your kids? And what about their kids?
Yeah.
Can you guarantee that your grandchildren are going to be wealthy enough that they never have to use that type of system?
Well, if you're Donald Trump, yes. But if you're somebody who's not like him, I guess.
Well, yeah, and their idea is put your money into this health savings account and pay for your own stuff. It doesn't work.
No, I think Michael Moore put it best. Filmmaker Michael Moore, when he
With
was comparing
Sicko?
Canada and the U.S., he says Canadians live in the world of we. Americans live in the world of me.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I think so. I mean, there's pros and cons on both sides of the board.
Oh, of course. And you have both sides.
And
you're
that's
an
right.
expatriate, right?
That's right.
Right Canada, right Canada, for their beady little eyes and flapping heads up on their lies. Right Canada, we need to form a full assault.
But I think that in the U.S., the insurance companies and the conservatives, want to run the system, which makes it unfortunate for people who are trying to keep their health care costs down, and the insurance companies that are trying to build their profit margin beyond all reasonable, I would say reasonable doubt. That's not the word I was going for, but that's pretty much the way it is. When you have insurance company executives that are making more in bonuses than
$2 billion
than a block of families make in a year, there's a real real program. That's where the waste is
way
in
more than a
their
block,
pocket.
though. We're talking like $2 billion severance packages and
Yeah.
profits. And,
It's more than what a city makes.
you said there's pros and cons. I'd like to hear the cons
The cons of which side?
of our socialized medicine, which isn't exactly single payer like
Wait
France.
times.
I would say
I just explain that. It's like the exception to the rule, all that's not even an argument against socialized medicine. That's an argument to hire more doctors.
No, the arguments would be if you're in that kind of capitalist like American, you don't want to pay for a poor person to have to.
Yeah, that's like privatizing the fire department. I don't want to have to kick in taxes so somebody's house burns down.
Yeah.
But what happens when you run a fire department as a profit is you provide incentive to screw people out of money. And there
It's
is
true.
And there is an incentive. There's that woman on the movie Sicko. She was like a medical care, blah,
Yeah.
blah. She denied somebody. She found a way to deny this guy heart surgery because it cost $200,000. And he died, and she got a fucking promotion.
Well, this is going on right now in Vancouver. There's that guy who wants to have his clinic that does MRIs and scanning and stuff like that to be legalized properly. So it's not billed under BC Medical, or it is billed under I can't remember. How
He kind of wants to adopt some kind of a semi-private public system.
And his argument is that if you open this up, then it'll make competition, so the price of an MRI to get it done will go down. That's not true, because an MRI machine is costing you millions and millions of dollars, and not very many people have that to drop, except for people who just want to exploit it and make money off of it. So they could drive the cost up, no problem.
Yeah, that's like the argument for getting rid of minimum wage.
Either way, this is actually something we'll have to keep an eye on for sure. And one last quick thing on speaking of U.S. and Trump. It was kind of fun to see this week Trump call CNN fake news. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
And the funny thing after that is Fox News coming out and defending CNN. Now, I never thought I would see that.
No, I think that's journalists finally banding together with backbone and realizing that they're going to have to change the way that they deal with.
This is
Trump.
maybe the silver lining in the whole Trump thing. It might actually be outrageous enough that the public and the journalists might actually have to wake up and pay attention to what actually is going on. So
They
that's
have-
CNN
wishful
is
thinking.
fake.
They have to, because in many ways they have to take some lessons from history, in that during World War II, the journalists looked at Mussolini and they looked at Hitler in a sort of a favorable fashion. They thought, oh, they're kind of different, and they built them up. And it was only after people began to say, oh, well, maybe there's not maybe they're okay. Maybe there's not really problems with these guys. It was only after that the journalist realized that they were promoting fascism and Nazism rather than
Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got a show to keep going. My dear Nancy, it's up to you.
Here we go. Speaking of history, here we go. And this day in history is a roundup of those events and individuals that altered and illuminated the days between January the 9th to January the 15th. Starting with January the 9th, it's Martyrs' Day in Panama, but definitely Hockey Day in Canada, which is always a good thing. In 1998, Hockey News selected Wayne Gretzky. Anybody ever hear of him?
No, never heard of him.
Never heard of him. No.
Hockey player, I think. Yeah, basketball
I think
maybe.
so.
You're a phony!
Yeah, they voted him best hockey player ever. So yay,
Still is.
Wayne!
The grade one.
And in 2015, the Canadian Museum of History was proud to announce that it had acquired the world's oldest known hockey stick. And it's known as the Moffat stick. It was hand-hewn in the 1830s in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, from a single piece of sugar maple. So that's all the hockey news for today. January the 10th is Traditional Day in Benin. And the most important event of the day happened in 1920 when the Versailles Peace Treaty and League of Nations Covenant came into force, and Canada was one of 42 founding nations of that organization.
Which is what? Can you expand on that?
The League of Nations. That was back in the League of Nations. in the
Versailles sounds
1920.
really familiar.
Yeah.
It's a town in Europe.
Okay. But that doesn't actually say what they do, right?
The League of Nations
it
was
the
before the
pre-runner of
UN.
the United Nations.
I thought the League of Nations was like Captain America.
No, those are the Avengers.
Oh, to be young again. January 11th, International Thank You Day. There really is such a thing as National Thank You Day.
And we started by Canada because we're so
It
polite.
was, believe it or yeah. Well, it's easy to believe. It's notable as being the birthday of John MacDonald, who was the first Prime Minister of Canada. So, a lot of things going on this week.
Yeah, a lot of Canada things.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nothing about I'm sorry today. Just thank you, thank you. January the 15th is Korean Alphabet Day. And in 2001, Wikipedia, a free wiki content encyclopedia, went online and immediately became the favorite reference for everything, whether or not the facts are true or not. We love Wikipedia.
Actually, they did the Journal of Nature did a study on Wikipedia and checking its sources matched up with other really reliable sources, whether it be the Britannica or medical journals and stuff. And Wikipedia is very reliable, so really tired of all the ad hominems that are run into with Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's getting better. I noticed that a lot of the articles that have citations needed seem to be diminishing, and people seem to be filling in the citations with
But
true
Wikipedia
facts.
never pulled back anything because what they said was untrue. You gotta give them that.
No, they used to suck because
They did.
anybody could just edit anything, but it's not like that anymore.
We're not allowed
Yeah.
to use them as a source in universities.
No, but you can use their sources as sources. You just click on references. People are just
There's still some issues with them. Anyway,
Yeah,
moving
anyway, Wikipedia. All right, here's a great story to round out the week. This is a great story. This is really fun.
probably Texas baseball or something.
In January 1969, a novel called Naked Came a Stranger hit the shelves by an author whose name was Penelope Ash. So it hit the market and it was an immediate success. It was immediate success because it was trashy, badly written, and filled with lots and lots of sex.
Is it the 50 Shades of Grey of that time?
Yeah, exactly. It was like the same genre as Peyton Place and novels
Bible.
by Jacqueline Suzanne, and it was a great trashy novel. So people bought it and just skimmed through all the rotten parts to get to the naughty bits, and it was being passed around, by housewives and students and everybody. They were making a lot of money. The author, Penelope Ash, played it to the hilt, appeared on talk shows wearing low-cut dresses, crooning phrases about the joys of sexual liberation. Remember, this is 1969. And delivering such statements as a writer's got to impale his guts on the typewriter. So she was making a big splash. So to no one's surprise, the book sold well, with reported sales of 20,000 copies by August. And this is, they didn't have Twitter, they didn't have
Yeah,
tablets, they didn't have Facebook, all that. So people really read, and it was a huge hit. So stories began to leak to the press that all was not as it appeared to be. So David Frost, who was the leading talk show host at the time, publicized that he'd have the author on to discuss the book. So after being introduced as Penelope Ash on his show, 17 men walked out on stage single file as the orchestra played the song, "A Pretty Girl is Like a Melody." 17 men. And the revelation of the true origins of the book prompted more sales, with the book selling approximately 90,000 copies by October 1969.
Wow.
And by the end of the year, the book had spent 13 weeks on the New York Times bestseller week.
Cool.
So even though it came out that there was no Penelope Ash, that there were 17 men that joined in writing this book, it became even a bigger hit than before. It
Wow.
was,
Oh,
it was
they
not only a
joined in
hit, it was a sensation.
They joined in writing it?
17 men wrote it. It
So
was
just the girl.
It was one of the girl, Penelope Ash. I'll tell you about her in a second. This was one of the greatest literary hoaxes of all time, and the man who conceived it was a Newsday columnist named Mike McGrady, and he was the one that got his sister-in-law Penelope to take the front about who
really?
was the author of this book. So the columnist, Mike McGrady, was convinced that the standards of literary and artistic taste were plummeting rapidly in the United States. Little did he know
What
how
would he
it
say
would come
today?
today. Exactly. So he was driven down by a relentless flood of media sensationalism that catered to the lowest common denominator. So he decided to design an experiment to actually test the depths of American cultural morass. He would commission the writing of a novel lacking in any redeeming features. No plot, no character development, no social insight, and definitely no verbal skill.
So Twilight, basically?
Yeah, there you go. That's got a precedent. It would possess only one feature that could possibly hold a reader's attention: kinky sex. In fact, it would have a minimum of 2 sex scenes per chapter. I mean, this thing was organized, like a launch into space.
You've read this?
Actually,
She reads it every night.
every night. If the book was a success, McGrady reasoned, it would prove that the American public completely lacked all standards of taste. Yeah, the book is still around. You can still get some of the original copies. So in 1966, this is how he did it. He recruited 24 fellow Newsday staff members, 19 men and 5 women, including Pulitzer Prize winners, to help him with the project. So the project was a sexually explicit novel with no literary or social value whatsoever. He provided each of them with a 4-page story outline warning them, true excellence in writing will be blue penciled into oblivion. There will be an unremitting emphasis on sex. The plot of the novel, such as it was, involved a suburban housewife who hatched a plan to sleep with all the married men in her neighborhood in order to get back at her husband for having an affair. So each collaborator took a separate chapter. The group wrote the book as a deliberately inconsistent hodgepodge, with each chapter written by a different author. Some of the chapters had to be heavily edited because they were too well written. So they gave the resulting book the provocative title, Naked Came the Stranger. And some of the collaborators eventually began to feel guilty about the money they were making from the deception, and they were the ones who leaked the story to the press.
The stuff you learn on this show.
Yeah.
Sounds like that Housewives TV show.
Yeah.
Was that called Orange County or something?
What is it?
Housewives,
Desperate
whatever.
Wives or something?
That's it, thank you. Desperate
Yeah.
Wives. Kevin would know, of course.
Yes. So the book subsequently inspired a slew of other collaborative novels, many of which adopted versions of the Naked Came the Stranger title in homage to the original. So in 1970, just as a capper, McGrady wrote a book about the hoax, which was called Stranger Than Naked, or How to Write Dirty Books for Fun and Profit. And in 1975, Naked Came the Stranger was made into an X-rated movie. So there goes the.
So maybe our listeners should send us an email saying, should the Left of the Valley crew start writing sexy naked stories to get some funding for this show? Yes or no? Send us an email at nancy@leftofthevalley.com.
And just include some science in there, subliminally. So.
Right, and please include $10 for a fee. And that, dear listeners, brings to a close another. I just had to take up the time with that one story because I just love that story. It's just
a good story.
Well,
It's a good story. So that brings to a close another passing parade of interesting, mundane, unusual, and occasionally bizarre events. And now I have to question, are they as bizarre as the news from Trump last week and people that make up this day in history?
Well, they actually had an interesting study where they found that men obviously prefer, porno, TV show, DVD, whatever, because it's visual, right?
Yeah.
And women prefer the exact same thing, but in book form, because it kind of leaves it more to be emotional and their own imagination and that kind of thing. So I need to get some of these books and just hand them out, eh?
Oh, goodness. Thank you so much, Nancy, for this wonderful
It was
segment,
a fun
as
read.
usual.
It was a fun read. It really was.
Before we go on the break and we go get our guest for our food waste segment today, let's do Brilliant Moment, brought to you by Religion.
Whoa, that sounds weird.
Yeah, I've kind of changed it a bit. Now, did you guys know, talk about bad science, somebody keep it on tally, you might catch on fire over this.
Uh-oh.
Did you know that some creationists claim Beowulf, you know Beowulf?
Yeah.
Is an eyewitness account of dinosaur existing with humans.
Well, yeah, it was, wasn't
The
it?
stupid it burns, man.
Can you give a description of Beowulf?
Beowulf is the... Okay, let me read the story here. Recently, geologist Andrew Snurling, the director of research for Ken Ham's Answer in Genesis, there we go, argued that Beowulf, which is an old English epic poem that dates between the 8th and the 11th century, is evidence of humans and dinosaurs interacting. Of course, it's a work of fiction, right? Mm-hmm. Louisville Magazine reporter Charles Wolford recounts a surreal exchange between Answer's Genesis geologist Andrew Snelling and himself at the Noah's Ark theme park. He introduced the program introduced me to geologist Andrew Snelling, who followed Ken Ham in the U.S. from Australia, and for the last 9 years has been the director of research for Answers in Genesis. So then he says, there were dinosaurs on the Ark, right? And Snelling nodded, right. So then he says, then why are dinosaurs extinct today? He says, dinosaurs went extinct after they left the Ark. After the flood, we had an ice age. We had a radically different world. Some creatures weren't able to adapt, but most cultures in the world, have some legends about dragons. And there's a dragon in Beowulf, right?
Uh-oh.
Is that what Beowulf is? Is it
Well, it's a story about Danes going to a kingdom because the kingdom is cursed, and they fight some kind of demon, and then he's crowned king, and later on he ends up siring with the demon witch, and then his child becomes a dragon, and he's killed at the end.
So nothing to do with wolves.
It's usually the first,
No, it's just the title. of the thing.
It's usually one of the first pieces of literature high school kids are exposed to when they're starting to, understand what literature is, and everybody hates it, unfortunately. Well, not everybody, but it's a bear to get through.
It's scary to think that they would take such a story and this is supposedly an intellectually cultured man, right? I mean, he's a geologist, right? And why the hell would he start saying something like that?
Well,
because it's just the Bible's fiction.
Exactly.
Beowulf is fiction. He's pretty consistent about what he believes.
I came up with an interesting analogy that I'd kind of like your guys' opinion on. Kevin and I were debating in this atheist versus theist debate central group, and there's this totally crazy guy in there that copies and pastes from Andrew Snelling and Answers in Genesis in general. So what I was thinking, when you use the example in reverse to get them to kind of think about it, is let's say we took only mythicists, right? And they created their own scientific peer-reviewed journal that has a faith statement that says, in order to publish in this journal, you have to declare that you believe Jesus is 100% myth, otherwise you're not going to publish your stuff.
Yes.
Clearly that would be biased crap and completely unfair, because then it's like Richard Carrier not letting Bart Ehrman have his own 2 cents, and vice versa. And that's not how they do that. Bart Ehrman and Richard Carrier can submit their stuff to the same peer-reviewed journals, just like Francis Collins and Kenneth Miller can, regarding the Journal of Nature, Cell, blah, 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 with Richard Dawkins. So they've created their own journals, these creationist journals, which are peer-reviewed. Well, yeah, of course. You've agreed that you got these faith statements that everybody has to sign. That's just as bad as mythicists doing the same thing. And the creationists would be like, well, of course, that's bullshit. It's just a bunch of mythicists sitting around patting each other on the back.
Exactly.
It's the same damn thing.
And on top of that, you also have to add, and just because this gentleman here, Snelling, he's a geologist. He's not an evolutionary biologist. So although you might know much about geology, his argument about dragons is worth nothing. It's not worth anything more, in my opinion.
But
And why are we paying attention to it?
It's just funny.
Even his arguments on geology are still a bunch of crap.
Yeah,
because
sure
they don't actually pass peer review. He just has decided that we didn't know what the state of radioisotopes were back then. Therefore, the Earth is 6,000 years old.
Yeah, of course.
Even though it would have completely melted it. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to point out, and a good analogy, a good argument for people to use against these creationist journals is like a mythicist journal, because the creationists hate the Jesus never existed stuff.
Yes, they do. Well, thank you very much, guys, and we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with our guest, Jenny Rustemeyer. Stay with us.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
What is secular humanism?
Critical thinking.
Knowledge is freedom. Freedom from ignorance and its offspring, fear.
The BC Humanist Association has been active in the Vancouver area for over 25 years. We offer a friendly and welcoming place to make new friends, as well as free educational lectures. We invite you to join us any Sunday at 10 a.m. in the Oak Ridge Senior Center. Please visit our website for more details, bchumanist.ca.
A Canadian, a New Yorker, and a Southern belle walked into a podcast, and all hell broke loose. Seriously, though, what happens when we three ladies get together? Well, definitely a lot of talking. And accents. Funny accents. Well, I don't have an accent, but my co-hosts sure do. We mix North, South, and the Great White North together for 2 hours of pure secular discussion. Nothing is off limits. From goofy religions like Scientology, woo like ghost hunting and alternative medicine, to hardcore history, hermeneutics, sex, and science. We cover it all. What the heck is a hermeneutic? Well, it's not a guy named Herman who sings falsetto, that's for sure. Join Beth, Ashley, and myself, Deborah, every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and we take you beyond the trailer park and bring the conversation to life. Join us live on YouTube and participate in the conversation via the Q&A system, or catch us later on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, and Nobex. Visit www.beyondthetrailerpark.com for links to the show and our upcoming schedule. Bring your wine and sweet tea and settle in for fun facts and free thinking. We happily wear the explicit tag, though, so make sure to wash out your mouth with something tasty before listening. That's live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Come give us a like and a share, no matter what type of accent you have.
And we're back. So our next guest is a Vancouver filmmaker who not only talks the talk, she actually walks the walk too. She's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jenny Rustemeyer. Hi Jenny, how you doing? Good, let's give her some applause. How about you guys feel about that? There we go.
Too kind. Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, Jenny. We're so pleased to have you, especially for our 100th show. You're special, the show's special, so it's a good match.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of homeless people, and we said, you guys have to clap or you're not getting your sandwiches.
You're so mean.
Jenny, for our audience that might not know who you are, would you be so kind to give us the Reader's Digest version of who Jenny Rustemeyer is?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
I'm a filmmaker based in Vancouver, and my partner Grant and I made 2 documentaries. The first one, called The Clean Bin Project, was about a year-long challenge to live zero waste, and the second one was about food waste, called Just Eat It.
So your first movie, The Clean Bin Project, which I highly recommend, by the way, to everybody. Give us a quick synopsis on what was that about.
So Grant and myself challenged each other to live completely zero waste. We stopped buying material goods for a year, and then we tried to produce as little garbage as possible, and whoever had the least amount of garbage at the end of the year won. Pretty simple concept, but actually harder to do than you think.
Now this had to be somewhat tough, right? I mean, there is garbage in absolutely everything. You guys, if you actually take a look at the movie, they actually have to take like their Tupperware to the grocery store to get like cheese to put into the Tupperware and all that. That must have been a difficult experience.
Yeah, I mean, we stopped buying clothing and things like that, so we really were focusing on the food and food packaging, and once you become aware of it, you just realize it's everywhere.
Wow. And there was a point where they were even making their own soap and deodorant and all that, and toothpaste. So you guys still do that? You still keep to that?
Yeah, Grant still uses baking soda for deodorant. I sometimes make toothpaste, but usually we buy it at the bulk store because there's so many more options now than there was when we were making the film.
Mm-hmm. And the latest collaboration you two had was about food waste. Please elaborate on that, please.
Grant and myself. Similar type of story. We challenged ourselves to live exclusively off rescued food for 6 months to draw attention to the issue that perfectly edible food is ending up in the garbage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what I meant, right? She doesn't just talk the talk; she actually walks it too.
No, when you see the documentary and visually you see what the waste is, the impact is so much greater than words. I mean, you can read about how many tons of food, but when you see what's being wasted, it makes such, well, Jenny, you know that, but you know, to the viewer and to the consumer, that was such a huge emotional impact, which is why the film is such a big success.
So we're gonna be talking about food waste today, but before we actually let Jenny go and unleash Jenny and all her facts, let's do something we haven't done in quite a while. Let's do a pop quiz.
Oh, I knew.
You knew it.
I almost
the
felt
bane of
that
Nancy's
coming
existence.
before the words were out of your mouth.
The answer is always C?
No, it's not always C. So we're doing a pop quiz today, and you three are facing off against Jenny. Perfect. Let's go. 4 questions. There's nothing to it. All right, guys.
Not for you. You know the answer.
That's my privilege as host.
I know.
Question 1. In Canada, how much food value in dollars ends up in landfills every year? Is it A, 31 billion, B, 12 billion, C, 7.5 billion, or D, none? The wasted food is fed to Godzilla to keep him from eating Tokyo.
Oh, how I wish it was
Godzilla,
D.
obviously.
Yeah, obviously. Okay, I'm gonna take Tyler's advice.
No, I'm going with A because what's the population of Canada? Like 35
million, 35 million.
Yeah.
And was that the option? 35 million, or was it
A was 31 billion.
Oh, billion.
Yeah, these are all billions.
I'm still going to take your advice, whether you take it or not. I'm going to go with C. I'm going to, it's a
7.5 for Nancy.
Yeah.
Kev.
Omicron.
Okay. Tyler.
What was 12 million? Was that
12 billion, 31 billion, or 7.5?
Okay, I'd go 12 billion.
12 billion. Jenny, what's your answer?
I'm going to go with A, 31 billion.
She's the queen. She knows.
Yeah.
Holy.
Question 2. How many tons of food gets thrown out worldwide each year? This is the whole world.
Man.
Is it A, 500 million tons? Is it B, 1.3 billion tons? Is it C, 100 million tons, or is it D, 2 billion tons?
B.
B, 1.3?
Yeah,
A.
500
There's
million?
no option for a hell of a lot.
No,
It all
no.
has to, okay, I'll go B.
B was the
Shit
highest.
ton.
So
And Jenny, what do you say?
1.3 billion. B.
That is
Yay.
it. 1.3 billion tons. Look at that.
This game is fixed.
She's kicking ass. She's kicking ass.
oh, I only got one wrong.
Question 3. How many Canadians use the food bank every month?
Ooh.
Is it A, 350,000, B, 500,000, C, 850,000, or D, just those who have those who have poor food credit ratings?
C.
And the numbers all run, I can't keep
350,
track of
500, 850.
I'm going to say B, but the numbers are growing. So as we sit here, regardless of what number there is, there's more.
Just go with the
on
highest.
I'm going with
sheet of
850.
paper.
850?
Yeah, me too.
Jenny?
Yeah, 850 C.
That's right.
Yeah.
850. Look at that. You guys are kicking ass.
2 for 3.
So how much food do retailers, because retailers throw away a lot of food that they don't sell, and percentage-wise, how much food do they throw away? Is it 3%? Is it 5%, 7%, or D, 10%?
10.
I'd say 5.
I'm going to go C.
And Jenny, your answer?
D.
10% it is.
Oh, man.
Congratulations. Yeah, Jenny defeated you guys.
Oh, she beat me by 1.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
all the numbers are
She's the
so
expert.
it's so depressing, isn't it, Jenny? Just depressing.
She's one of those experts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she totally is.
So,
She's kicking ass.
so I have a little story and question for you here, Jenny. The mother of my children worked at 7-Eleven for quite a while, and they were basically ordered to take the food that went expired right away and stick it in a locked garbage can.
Yes.
So the homeless people couldn't get to it. So I've been saying this for years, and it seems like the advanced countries like France tend to catch up to my ideas much later on. I said, why not just, put it outside on a table or something like that so people can come and take it and not have to, go through the garbage and that kind of thing. So, and France had recently passed a law saying grocery stores are not allowed to basically destroy food that could be given to homeless people, whether they get sick off of it or not. It's fine. You just leave it out on a table. So do you think that would be a good solution for this kind of thing?
I mean, I think food should be donated for sure. And if organizations are uncomfortable with putting it on a table, there's lots of nonprofits that are willing to pick it up. In France, that legislation is actually for grocery stores over a certain size, so over like 4,000 square feet or something like that.
Now, Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people are under the impression that if you are a store and let's say you have a couple of dented cans or something like that, and you decide to give them away to charity, and somebody gets, unfortunately, some kind of food poisoning, because it can happen, that they could be sued. Now, is that true, or is that just a myth?
In Canada, we have Good Samaritan legislation province by province. Usually it's called the Food Donation Act or something like that, that protects companies that are donating food that's going to be given to people in need. So there really should not be fear of liability there.
See, that's important. I think, and that's worth repeating, because I bump into that all the time. Companies out there are not giving out the food because they're afraid of being sued. But like you said, there's a Good Samaritan law. Anybody want to look that up? Kevin, can you look that up? The Good Samaritan law? Let's try to pull something up on that. The Good Samaritan law. Foodwastemovie.com.
Well, the benefit of sticking it outside on a table is that it gets eaten, obviously, and you don't have to worry about taking up extra space in fridges and that sort of thing that you have to pay for, right?
Yeah.
So I do like that idea. It's just
Jenny, have you noticed during your movie, were you guys bumping into a lot of companies that were really, really unwilling to cooperate?
Denied.
With the wasted food, unwilling to give out to charity. Were they looking for excuses?
Sure, some companies don't donate, and they usually say because they're scared of liability or because it's not convenient with their schedule. So logistics comes into play, but I mean, really, I don't think those are very good excuses.
On the other side of the coin, I agree 100% with what Jenny's saying. I work with the homeless here in Abbotsford, and there's a dearth of donations. There's some, but not many. But on the other side of the ledger, there is an organization called Habitat for Humanity out of Moncton, and they have managed to talk Atlantic Superstores into donating the food that is either right at expiry date or a little bit beyond, and they're getting food donations from practically everybody in Moncton. So there's a city that has come to realize we can donate. It's better for us to do that and help people than to throw it away and fear liability, which doesn't happen. So at least there's one bright spot, and I wish we could use Moncton as an example, for the rest of Canada, because I figure if Atlantic Superstore is authorizing it in Moncton, there's no reason why Superstore can't do it throughout Canada. Have you run into them, Jenny, at all, and had any dealings with them in terms of food donations?
I haven't heard of that actual organization, but certainly in every city and town, there do seem to be some organizations that are working on the ground to collect donations. And a lot of times it's just about building relationships with the people who have the food, with the wholesalers and with the retailers.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to rely on volunteers, I'm guessing, right? Not paid employees that are picking the stuff up, or what?
Well, you mean if you're the charity?
Well, whoever's going to pick up this food immediately, I'm guessing they're volunteers, right?
Yeah, lots of nonprofits use volunteers, but some don't. I mean, we filmed with Second Harvest in Toronto, and they pay all their drivers. And the reason they do that is because they want to have those reliable pickups. So they do have staff.
I'm just wondering where that money comes from. Oh, okay, yeah, so that's quite dependent there. We should have a similar law to that of France. I mean, did you say that there was some type of liable law there? Like if 7-Eleven took their food that had just gone past expiry and put it on a table outside and somebody got sick, would they get sued?
The liability law is really covering if you're donating to a nonprofit organization that is then going to feed the hungry. It doesn't cover you if you're just throwing food out on the street and hoping that someone's going to take it.
Okay, because we have this discussion on my house where, it says the milk is best before January 1st. And I'm like, okay, when it turns midnight, the milk doesn't go bad. It doesn't work that way, as soon as it strikes midnight, January, it's bad. No, I drink or eat stuff that is a little past expiry, maybe even a couple days. I go based on, smell and texture and stuff like that. If they're handing out free milk and it smells terrible, I don't know, don't drink it. That seems like pretty common sense to me.
Yeah, best before does not mean bad after.
Well, and a lot of it is shipping food kind of around the world, because obviously you have to put the stuff in bins.
Now, Kevin, you want to say something, Kevin? You go right ahead now.
I was just okay. Yeah, the Good Samaritan law was more so for people who help people like at the side of the street or whatever. Like they feel that they're in danger or they're injured or whatever. It protects them from having any kind of legal repercussions if they screw something up.
Yeah, the first Samaritan laws came about because some people were having a hard time rescuing other people's. For example, if you were trying to do CPR on somebody and you end up causing injury, and they would sue you afterwards, as we saw this especially in the States, then some people would say, you know what, I'm not even going to get there or go there, and this is why these Samaritan laws came to be. And then it transferred into the charity realm, I guess.
Yeah, that's where it's also called Good Samaritan. That was
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you.
Bill Emerson.
I'll tell you a little story that has to do with liability. About 40 years ago or so, when my kids were little, we had a friend of ours named Nita. And Nita would take her car to the grocery stores, and she'd have about 3 or 4 dogs in there, and she had some old clothes, and she wasn't the most spotless and sanitary person in the whole world.
Nope, she's looking at me when you say that again.
So she would go to the grocery stores, and she would ask the stores for their produce. And whatever else they had, baked goods, whatever it is that they had that was either out of date or it was a day old and they were expecting new produce in. And they would give it to her only because she would tell them, I need this to feed my pigs. And she would collect a ton of stuff, and she'd go out maybe twice a week or so forth for her pigs. And actually, what she was doing is bringing all of that nice produce back to those of us who were on low income and were, some of us were having a hard time, some of us weren't. But we had food coming out the gazilles, because she could go and say, this is food for my pigs, when they wouldn't give it to her, when she would say, I have people who are in need, can you let us have it?
My mother was actually using the very same line, but that's because we were like 4 boys and actually either out of house and home. So,
So you lived off this recycled food or old food from restaurants and stuff for how long?
Oh, is that for me or is that for Jenny?
No, that's for Jenny.
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead, Jenny. Sorry.
So Grant and I did it for 6 months. Originally, it was going to be 1. I agreed to 1. And then he felt that we hadn't proved enough, so we went for 6.
Well, and you saved money on your grocery bill, so. But you went to restaurants and asked them for their out-of-date stuff, and they just flat out gave it to you?
Sometimes we asked at grocery stores or at the end of the farmer's market, and in that case, we would often pay a little bit for the food. But then the vast majority of what we found ended up being around the back in the dumpsters at grocery stores and especially at wholesalers. Once we started finding dumpsters that were full, it's very attractive to keep going back, right?
Is it true that there is a disturbing trend now that since this whole food waste has become a bit of a small movement, that now some of these retailers and wholesalers are actually locking up their bins? Have you bumped into that problem, Jenny?
Yeah, we found lots of locked bins, but I don't know if they're locking it to keep people from taking the food or to stop people from dumping other things. I mean, the ones that we found that were open, that were in the city, often people would dump like couches and mattresses and all kinds of other garbage in there, and then the company doesn't want to pay for that. So I think, there's lots of locked dumpsters, but I'm not exactly sure why they're locking them.
Well, that's why they should have tables on outside to put the food out on, because it's either going to get eaten or just go bad anyway. So
I would also notice in Vancouver that some people, when they took stuff out of the bins, would just leave a huge mess strewn in the alleys that somebody had to clean up.
Yeah, there's also a movement of they call binster divers in Vancouver, where they actually have a bit of a code of ethics. If you go bin diving, you actually have to leave the place in better shape than when you first got there. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
I think in most cities there are enough groups that work with the homeless that volunteers would be available to pick things up. The things could be, it's a matter of if there's a way to do things, there are people who are willing to be able to donate their time in order to make sure it comes to pass. Having to throw things away in locked bins where people who are hungry can't get at it, it's just criminal.
Mm-hmm.
It's inhumane.
I'd be happy to put a table outside of my place. I'm surrounded by a lot of duplexes and stuff with food. We have a new recycling program coming here in May, at least in Chilliwack. I don't know about you guys, but everything has to be very separated. Like, there's one can for organic, biodegradable. There's one for plastic. There's one for actual garbage. And you get sued up the ass. It's like a $500 or $5,000 fine if you get caught by the garbage people. Like, they're all clear bags, right? So they can see whether it's actually garbage or not. And if you have recycling mixed in with garbage, then you get sued.
Yeah, it's becoming quite serious. There's a very successful little program right across the water here in Mission about the they call it the rot box, where you put all your compostable in a separate little container, and the city takes that away.
Wow, the problem is they're only going to show up every 2 weeks, because right now our garbage comes every Wednesday, and now they're going to show up every other Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I've got 3 kids. Like, we have lots of garbage every Wednesday. I've got 4 or 5, garbage bags, and now I'm going to have 8 to 10. And obviously I got raccoons and this and that. But if I can leave some of the stuff out for people to just take, which I do all the time. I have crappy TV, I stick it outside and I say free. And you know what? It disappears in a couple of days.
Well, Jenny, what changes have you seen since the documentary?
In terms of food waste, there's really been more of a awareness movement. So we see mainstream media talking about food waste in ways that they never did before. John Oliver did a segment, like full 20 minutes on food waste, and Tyra Banks was talking about it on her show, and it was on the cover of National Geographic. So it really is coming into the mainstream, whereas before we were just talking about food and local food and GMO food and all those kinds of things, but nobody was talking about food waste.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like, I mean, part of it is due to the film, and part of it is that we just had great timing, and we were able to get swept up in that kind of movement.
You said you did most of your film in Toronto, right?
No, we filmed most of it in Vancouver, where we live, and then we do have some experts from the U.S. So we went to California, we went to Las Vegas, we went to North Carolina, and to the U.K. And then we did film some in Toronto, but actually most of those scenes got cut in the end. It's unfortunate, but you can't fit everything into a film.
That's okay. Toronto deserves it anyway. But in your experience in the Vancouver region, I mean, we saw some numbers early on during the quiz. Those are huge numbers. Do you see a lot of it? Is it very visible, or is it more hidden?
I think it's usually hidden. It's more visible in the States. It's easier to find food in dumpsters down there. And when we went to the large-scale farms in California, like the amount of food that they're leaving in the fields is pretty shocking. We don't have that same type of widespread agriculture here. But certainly there's food waste all along the food supply chain, and most of it is hidden. Like, you don't get to look in the warehouses and in the trucks and see what's happening there.
What about organizations like the Gleaners?
Which is what?
Well, they go into like fields and stuff like that. They collect all the stuff that people aren't going to use, or vegetables on the tail end, and they turn it into soup and they send it overseas.
Never heard of this.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, the Gleaners are here, and we also had an organization that is not working as much as they did the past couple of years, called Farm to Food Bank, where the founder of that went to all of the different farmers and said, "Will you let us take your ugly vegetables and produce that doesn't fit into regular store requirements, and we can pick that from your fields." And they've got like 30,000 tons a year of food, and then they turned that into charitable donations, for the food bank and also for other groups of people here who were homeless and in the lower end of the scale.
Is there a country that tends to be like the most advanced? Because I look at a lot of different social programs, and it always seems to be a lot of European countries, especially Scandinavian. I mean, I said earlier about France passing this law. I don't know if those laws exist anywhere else, but are there countries that you're aware of that are doing a really good job regarding this that we should maybe copycat? Or is it just the France kind of thing?
I mean, France is leading in terms of many legislation items. Every developed country still has food waste, and they have slightly different issues. So like when we went to Amsterdam, what they said is that the cost or the quality of living is so high, they don't actually have a lot of homeless people. So when they have surplus food, there's not as many organizations that can even take it. And they also had another issue that we don't have here, where there's a real stigma around taking leftovers home from a restaurant. Like, they would just not do that. And so lots of their campaigns are around, it's okay to take a doggy bag. And we don't really need that in Canada because we've kind of gotten over that. So
I renew my objection to this pointless endeavor. Informally now and by affidavit later. Time permitting.
Oh, I do it all
Cultural
the
stigma.
time. I do it all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
I always take my food home.
So Jenny, in closing there, what would you recommend to our listeners they do to alleviate this problem?
Well, first, educate yourself. You got to watch the film. You can watch it anytime on knowledge.ca.
Oh, shameless plug. No, I'm just
No, go for it. She go for it.
It's free to watch, so why would you not?
Yeah,
and
totally.
Talk to people about food waste. If you notice it, then call it out. Because I feel like if it's just under people's radar, they don't really realize that it's an issue, and it actually really is an issue. It's an environmental issue, and it's a social issue. We have lots of hungry people in this country, and we have more than enough food to go around, but we need to get it to them.
Perfect. Jenny, if people want to find out more about what you're doing, and you and Grant, and your next movies. Oh, by the way, maybe we should ask her that. What's your next project for you and Grant? What are you guys up to?
So right now we're taking a break from being in front of the camera. It's a little stressful on our relationship, especially in the edit room. So we're working on a mountain film where we're highlighting stories from BC about other people. So we're really excited about that this winter. And we'll probably we haven't officially been announcing that, but we announce things generally through Facebook.
Excellent. So if people want to find out more about what you guys are doing, where can they reach you?
Probably at thefoodwastemovie.com. Facebook page.
Perfect.
Okay, you can't let her go yet.
Oh.
Do you guys have any like petitions or anything like that we can forward on? Because I really want to actually physically do something. Maybe put political pressure on people to actually do something. Awareness is one thing, which is totally great in itself. But if it's not applied, it's kind of a waste. Pun intended.
So, I mean, locally, I really encourage people to get involved, like get their hands dirty and go out there with a gleaning organization or a nonprofit and volunteer. Once you see what's going on the ground, not only is it really rewarding, but you're really helping the problem. Politically right now, the big petitions are in the U.S. So there's an organization called Ugly Fruit and Veg, and they had a petition against Whole Foods to start selling ugly fruit and vegetables, those things that don't look exactly perfect. And they were successful with that. They started doing pilots with them now, and they've moved on to Walmart. So, I mean, think what you want about Walmart, but a lot of people grocery shop there. And if they can start buying things that are imperfect, that's really opening up the market. So that's where the petitions are right now.
Perfect.
Boycotts has a history of working very well. So I try to avoid 7-Eleven as much as I possibly can because of my recent experience with how terrible they are with the food thing and how they treat their employees and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I do the same thing with Walmart myself.
Wow, they got Chinese slaves. Why do you think everything's so damn cheap?
Yeah.
So when
Yeah,
you're not
exactly. I mean, ask your grocery stores if they have a donation program in place. I can tell you, Save on Foods in my neighborhood certainly does not.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much for your time and your candor and informing us on this subject. Before I let you go, there's one little thing I got to ask you. Can I get you to say, hi, I'm Jenny Rustemeyer, and I took a left at the Valley.
Hi, I'm Jenny Rustemeyer, and I took a left at the Valley.
And that was Jenny Rustemeyer and her absent partner, Grant Baldwin. Great interview.
Yeah, those are two extremely powerful documentaries. I would suggest that anybody would profit and benefit. I'd say benefit, not profit. Anybody would benefit from watching those two. It completely changes your idea on.
Absolutely.
Don't you have them, Kevin? Like own them here?
I have one of them.
Which
I don't.
one?
I have the Clean Bin Project.
Okay.
I think you can download either one of them for free.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
you can absolutely see it. The Clean Bin Project I actually aired publicly for people to see a little while back, and that's how I met Jenny and Grant, and they're a great, sweet couple, both of them.
Well, that Where to Invade Next documentary that you told me about with Michael Moore or whatever, that was one of the things that maybe was not there at that time, but that definitely should have been covered.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for everybody for being on our 100th episode, and cheers to the next 100 episodes we'll be doing. Coming up next week, we'll be talking to legendary anchor John McComb from CKNW. We'll be talking about depression, and he suffers from depression. He'll be taking us step by step, I guess, to what it's like to live with depression. After that, we have the velvety voice of Seth Andrews coming in at the end of the month. In February, we'll be talking to Anaya Damdrand. I got that right? Dandrand. And we'll be also talking about Michael Smith, about one of his podcasts. And we got some more stuff coming down the pipe for sure.
Heading for 200.
Yeah, that's right. And you can follow us on Left of the Valley. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at LETV Podcast. You can send us an email, leftatvalley@outlook.com.
We need more hate mail like that one guy sent you. That was great.
We don't get a lot of hate mail.
Please send us hate mail.
Anything else you guys want to add?
No, send us any kind of mail whatsoever. Let us
Exactly.
hear from you.
I guess we'll see you at episode 101. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.
Can reach the conclusion that all non-believers are evil. What a fucked up statement. Do you realize what you're saying? But according to your book, this is how your God made me. Skeptical of anything that contradicts history, denies evolution, hates science, promotes mystery. I'd rather see the truth than to bask in my own ignorance. Rather be alone than surrounded by damn idiots. As long as there's a breath in my body, you can bet your last dollar I'll be working hard fighting this problem. Religion is a disease, it comes from culture, only true on a regional scale. Science is universal. Are you to say that Horus isn't real, but Jesus is? Or Zeus, Thor, Mithra, Vishnu, you don't believe in them? I think the reason is apparent. You do what you're told and believe in the God assigned by your parents. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen, I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith, and unsubstantiated claims, that's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.